Hold on. Who actually lives here? A person or an IKEA catalog?
Someone who knows exactly what they want and what they don't.
And what don't they want?
Chaos, loss of control, and pizza boxes on the sofa.
I feel personally attacked.
Good, then you're exactly where you need to be. If you're someone who always keeps their home clean, or if you know someone like that, ask yourself one question. Why exactly? Not out of obligation, not because anyone's watching, just automatically, always, as if it's not a decision, but an inner compulsion.
I always thought they just had to.
Most people think that, but psychology tells a completely different story. Behind a clean home, there's no obsession with tidiness. There's a psychological system that reveals more about a person than any personality test. And by the end of this video, you'll understand why it says something about you, too. Chapter 1. The control behind the cleanliness. Let's start with something almost nobody talks about, because it doesn't feel like a problem, but it is. People who consistently keep their home clean rarely do it for aesthetic reasons alone. Psychologists have found that order on the outside is very often a direct response to disorder on the inside. The less control someone has over their inner life, over emotions, stress, uncertainty, the stronger the urge to control their outer environment. Order isn't an end in itself. Order is an answer, the visible response to something you can't see, inner restlessness, the feeling that something in life just isn't right. And here's the interesting part. Most people who function this way don't know it. They'd say, I just like things clean. But look closer and you'll notice. The cleaning almost always starts exactly when the stress goes up, when a big decision is looming, when life starts to feel uncontrollable.
So people who clean are actually stressed?
People who clean compulsively? Yes. People who clean regularly have often learned that order gives them a sense of security. That's a subtle but crucial difference. Imagine someone shows up at your door unannounced. Joy or panic? If you feel panic because your apartment isn't perfect, that's not a love of tidiness. That's a dependency on control. Chapter 2. Cleaning as a ritual. The cleaning ritual. This isn't just tidying up. This is a psychological reset button. Neuroscientists have found that repetitive physical activities like wiping, vacuuming, folding, offload the prefrontal cortex. That's the part of the brain responsible for planning, decision-making, and overthinking. When the hands are busy, the mind gets a moment to stop. Psychologists call this behavioral activation, using actions to regulate emotional states. Cleaning is one of the most effective forms of it, not because it solves problems, but because it signals to the brain, I have control, at least here, at least right now. Studies show that people in cluttered environments have higher cortisol levels, more stress hormones in the blood, and that cleaning up that environment measurably lowers cortisol. Cleaning is literally stress relief, physiologically.
Meditation, just with cleaning spray.
Exactly. That's also why so many people come home after a stressful day and immediately clean the kitchen. Not because they have to, but because the brain needs that signal, sometimes more urgently than sleep. Chapter 3. The invisible standard. People who consistently keep their home clean develop an invisible standard over time, an inner benchmark that activates automatically the moment they walk into someone else's apartment. And that benchmark judges, not maliciously, not consciously, but automatically, like a reflex. Psychologists call this projection of standards, the unconscious transfer of one's own values onto others. Someone who has internalized order as a core need literally cannot imagine how anyone could live in chaos, not out of arrogance, but because the brain has no other reference point. And this standard applies most of all inward. A single spot, a crooked picture. For most people, invisible. For someone with a high order standard, loud, disruptive, like a sound only they can hear. And that inner judge never takes a break.
I live on that side of the screen, and I'm fine with it.
We know, Hoodie. We know. But here's the paradox. That exact same standard is also why these people create spaces where others feel genuinely comfortable. Their home isn't an accident, it's an offering.
Chapter 4. The fear behind the shine. Not every cleanliness is healthy. Not every order is freedom. Sometimes an immaculate home isn't a sign of strength, it's a sign of fear. Psychologists distinguish between adaptive order, which helps you feel good, and maladaptive order, which develops when cleanliness becomes a condition for your own well-being, when someone can only relax if everything is perfect, when a messy room feels like personal failure. From the outside, discipline, self-control, strength. From the inside, a pressure that never lets up. The quiet belief, if my home isn't perfect, neither am I. That's the moment order stops being a tool and starts becoming a prison. A very clean, very tidy prison. Clinically, in severe cases, this is called compulsivity, closely linked to anxiety disorders and a deep-rooted sense of loss of control. But even below that clinical threshold, millions of people suffer daily under their own standards, without ever calling it that.
That doesn't sound like loving tidiness. That sounds like loneliness.
Yes, sometimes it is. The key question is, do I clean because I want to, or because I'm afraid of what happens if I don't?
Chapter 5. The home as a mirror. Your home doesn't lie. Psychologists have shown that the state of an apartment correlates significantly with the emotional state of its inhabitant. People who feel overwhelmed inside often live in outer chaos. People seeking inner control create outer order. People who feel empty inside often have an apartment that feels sterile, perfect, but lifeless. A study from Princeton University showed that clutter measurably reduces cognitive performance because the brain constantly tries to process and prioritize visual stimuli. Chaos in the room means chaos in the mind, not as a metaphor, as a neurological fact. But the opposite is equally true. Someone living in a sterile, over-controlled space, without warmth, without a single book out of place, often lives internally in a space that allows no mistakes either.
My apartment is saying a lot right now. I'm just not listening.
But here's what matters. It's not about whether your home is clean or chaotic. It's about whether it feels right for you, whether you can actually recover there. Because that's the real standard, not perfection, but how do I feel when I come home?
Chapter 6. When cleanliness becomes a language. There's one more dimension almost nobody talks about, and it might be the most human one of all. For many people, cleanliness isn't an obligation. It's a language, a way of expressing care without using words. When someone spends hours preparing before guests arrive, not because they have to, but because they want the other person to feel at home, that's not an obsession with tidiness. That's love translated into action. Psychologists call this an acts of service love style. People with this style don't express affection through words, but through deeds, through a tidied room, through fresh sheets for a guest, through a set table nobody asked for. A form of empathy that often goes unnoticed because it's quiet. But there's a shadow side here too. When care is expressed through order and the other person doesn't recognize it, silent disappointment follows. The feeling, I do so much and nobody sees it.
So, some people actually clean for other people?
More often than you'd think. And that's neither weak nor excessive. It's one of the most unsung forms of care. One you only understand once you stop dismissing it as a love of tidiness.
Chapter 7. The psychological profile. Who are the people who keep their home clean? Studies show they share certain traits at above average rates. They're conscientious, one of the big 5 personality factors, strongly correlated with reliability, self-discipline, and goal orientation. They have a pronounced need for security. They process stress through action rather than withdrawal, and they have a strong connection between their outer environment and their inner well-being. They take responsibility seriously, for themselves, for others, for their space. They don't wait for someone else to clean up. That's a strength. But like every strength, it has a shadow side. These people set high standards for themselves and for others.
They struggle to let go. They're sensitive to chaos, even when it's someone else's chaos. And they sometimes forget that perfection isn't a goal, it's a trap.
I never fall into that trap because I never start.
That's a strategy. Not a good one, but a strategy. The real question isn't, am I tidy or chaotic? The question is, does my environment serve me or do I serve it? Answer that honestly, and you've learned more about yourself than any personality test could tell you.
I just realized my pizza box has been on the sofa for 3 days.
And what does that tell you?
That I'll clean up tomorrow.
Of course. Do you recognize yourself in any of these chapters? Tell us in the comments. Are you team order or team chaos? And what do you think that says about you?